Good afternoon and good morning to those who are on the West Coast. I'm Jonathan Blank, the Director of Relationship Marketing at DICE, and I want to, on behalf of all of DICE, welcome you to our first in our Pro Tips webinar series for 2015. We're really excited for this year. We're going to connect you with the experts that can show you how to integrate resume-based recruiting with social recruiting. And here at DICE, we're really trying to power this integration through a combination of these insights that you're going to hear about, these best practices, and our open web platform. And today we're going to talk about going mobile. And this stems from feedback we've heard from all of you to learn more about this area, and from a great conversation we had with our speaker that I'll tell you about in a second. Before I introduce our speaker for today, just a couple of logistical things. First, we want to make this interactive, so at any time you can type your questions into the chat bar for the webinar, and during the final 15 minutes, we will pose these questions to our speaker. If we don't get to them, you will have two other opportunities to get them answered. We'll be going to Twitter after the webinar for 30 minutes, and you can use the hashtag DICEinnovate, and I'll give that again at the end. And we will answer questions for another half hour on Twitter after the webinar is over. We will also, if we don't get to any of those questions, we will follow up next week on our blog with further answers to those questions. And don't worry about taking copious notes. We are recording the webinar, and we will send out the recording early next week, so you will have it for your records, and so you can share it with your colleagues. Finally, we want to make sure we get your feedback on these webinars and the topics for them to make sure you are fully educated on how to integrate resume-based recruiting and social recruiting. If you have any questions, comments, good or bad, you can email employers@dice.com, and I will again give that at the end of the webinar. With all of that said, you did not come today to hear me speak. You came to hear our guest speaker, Jessica Miller-Merrill. She is the president of Exceptional HR. She is also the founder of a blog that I am sure you frequent called bloggingforjobs.com. And as importantly for us, she has 13 years of experience as a practitioner in recruiting. So she will definitely be giving both strategic advice and advice that you can act on right away. With that, I am going to hand it over to Jessica.
Thanks, Jonathan, and thanks everybody for tuning in and joining us today. If you are a Twitter person or you like to be on the Twitters, I will be watching the stream as I'm talking. I won't be live tweeting. I've set some things up to share as the course of the conversation goes by, but I will look for questions. So if you have something specific, you can go directly and ping Jonathan, or feel free to share, and I'll be monitoring the hashtag DICEinnovate as we're talking. So let's go ahead and get started on what we're going to be talking about today. And we're going to be talking about how to source through mobile apps like Dice Recruiter. Obviously, this is a DICE-hosted webinar, so we'll be talking a little bit about some cool things that I really love about what DICE is doing. We'll also be talking about communication strategies and how to adapt your communications for being on the go, whether you're a job seeker or a recruiter who, if you're like me, you are always going somewhere. We were talking before we went live here that, you know, when you're a parent or somebody who maybe is juggling multiple activities, you are on the go from soccer to maybe improv and everything in between. So making sure that we're able to be on the go and still be professional and, you know, meet the expectations of our recruiting obligations is extremely important. And then how we can set up our mobile career sites for mobile success. So those are kind of the 3 points that we're going to be talking about today. Go ahead and go to the next slide. We're also talking about tech recruiting, which I think for those of us that are involved in the technology space, whether you're in Silicon Valley or maybe you're in the New York area or you're in Minnesota, Dallas, wherever, technology, recruiting, finding these hidden gems among really just a very small, minute amount of candidates who are qualified to do the job is extremely hard. So a lot of what we're going to be talking about today with regard to mobile will be kind of broad-based, but I want to focus really on, for you guys, a little bit about the tech side of things and really how the market is changing and growing. I mean, it's crazy just to think about the need for Hadoop engineers just in the San Francisco area. So let's say we're looking at the number of job postings that are there. The number of job postings that are in the San Francisco area for Hadoop engineers. So if I was going out there today, there are not enough qualified Hadoop engineers, not even in California, but in the whole United States, that can fill all the openings and the demand in San Francisco. And so I know that you are living this right now when you're like, man, these people are crazy hard to find. So we're going to be talking about why mobile can help transform your technical recruiting efforts. One thing that I want to point out is that 37% of tech pros expect things to change this year. So they want to be courted, they want to be engaged, and they know that they're in demand. And so many of them are removing profiles from social networks. They're kind of going underground and focusing on relationships. So they don't necessarily want to be found, but they do want to be found when they're looking for a new opportunity. Go ahead and go to the next slide. When I'm looking at mobile in general, I want to point out that Apple Q4 sales for 2014 were $75 billion. So mobile penetration at the moment is 75% in the United States, so smartphone mobile penetration. So people are on these mobile devices, and when you think about the use for mobile, and I know this is true for me when I go to a restaurant or I'm at a conference or an event, I will leave my purse with my computer at the desk or at the table of my friends when I'm at a conference or maybe having cocktails with my girls, but I will take my mobile phone with me when I go to the restroom. So mobile is not just a necessity, it's critical to the way we communicate in, the current era. And I think that mobile usage is only going to grow. Our reliance, certainly my reliance, since I got my iPhone in 2008 has increased. Before then I was a CrackBerry addict, but now I'm an iPhone girl. And the way I use it, the way I rely on it, the way it's really infiltrated into my life is what we're seeing across the board. We really don't, I can't remember a time I didn't have a mobile smartphone device. Right now there's a real disconnect between recruiters and job seekers. Despite that 43% of job seekers are using mobile in their job search, 59% of recruiters currently are not investing in mobile career sites. And so when I talk about mobile penetration being 75% and people are spending ridiculous amounts of time on their mobile device, it makes sense to me that we would go where the candidates are. We would go where our candidate pools are, and that is mobile. It's the one place where I know they're going to be spending their time. One thing I'll mention that we have here on the slide is that recruiters are seeing a benefit to their mobile, and we'll share some examples of things. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about where we should be beginning. Smart mobile starts with first understanding your target candidate. And that might seem like a no-brainer, but I think that the real secret to leveraging mobile for your current recruiting efforts is to understand your audience of people that you're trying to market and reach. And that could be as simple as polling recent hires, sitting down and talking with maybe your recent hires for engineering, asking them how they looked for a job, how did they reach out, how did they find about your opportunity, how did they prefer to be engaged, or what methods were they using to be able to look for a job? Was it a meetup group? Were they calling on friends? Were they going to a tech happy hour? What kind of things were happening? And from there, you can kind of build a strategy. Another great way outside of talking to recent hires is also to talk to candidates. So maybe those that are in your applicant tracking system that weren't the right fit for the job. They want feedback from you. A large percentage of companies are not providing candidates feedback. So why not use the feedback opportunity? They're desperate for information or an update about where they are in terms of the candidate pipeline. Use that as an opportunity to learn more about them and maybe how they're using technology, particularly mobile, social networks, all these different pieces of the puzzle to be able to find a job. How did they come about wanting to apply for your job opening? All right, go ahead and next slide here. When I take a look at what I call the HR tech hype, and so this is one thing that I like to talk about a little bit because I think that there is a tendency among influencers and to really kind of look at things that are shiny and new and things that might generate lots of buzz but aren't actually effective and practical for the recruiter who's behind the desk filling that maybe average 15 open requisitions that they have per month. So this presentation is going to be filled with practical, field-focused information versus kind of the hype that is out there. And when I think of hype, one of the biggest pieces of hype has kind of come and gone over the last 18 months is Google Glass. For a product that really had a small percentage of people or a number of people who were glass holes, myself included, they got massive amounts of press. And there were people who spent millions of dollars, potentially thousands of dollars certainly, on developing apps for the Google Glass that has yet to become available to the public on a regular basis. So this presentation is really focused on what's good for you, how we can leverage it today, versus just some sort of talking head telling you about the newest, greatest thing. I'm thinking about the recruiters and myself as I'm trying to fill technical openings for the companies that I consult and work with. I always like to point that out because I think it's really important, and especially when you think about a lot of folks who maybe haven't been in the field for a while or maybe picked up the phone or had to use a Google X-ray or a Facebook graph search to be able to find a candidate. So let's talk about trends first. I want to kind of set the stage, and we're going to take a look at some of the things that are happening in the industry. I talked about mobile, the adoption, but let's take this a step further. We are spending, and this is per month, 164, and we're spending on the phone 644 voice minutes, but we are spending and making 164 and a half phone calls each month, and we're sending, this is on average, 144.1 text messages. I'm just getting a text right now. I can see it coming in. I probably get about 60 to 75 text messages a day. Now, let me just say that the read rate for a text message is in excess of 97%, which within the first 6 minutes, people are reading and acknowledging and responding to text message at a higher and even faster rate than email, and that's because of the way it's pushed up into the forefront. So mobile trends, these kind of things are important as we go about and develop our strategy. Now, when we look at social media in particular, you can go ahead and go to the next slide, it's important to think about social as well as mobile adoption, in different industries. My papers are a little bit mixed up here. So let's go back to the mobile consumer trends, and I'll sort this bad boy out here. All right, so when we look at mobile trends, it's important for you to think about usage based on the demographic or the area that you're recruiting. I'm not going to focus a lot about mobile recruitment in terms of a global strategy. However, if you are recruiting in Asia or Australia or in other parts of the world, even Canada beyond the U.S., I think it's really important for you to really take a look at smartphone use and adoption by age group and category. Text messages, as I mentioned, I love them. I even say on my work voicemail, please don't leave me a voicemail. Send me a text message or an email, just because I don't listen to my voicemail messages. However, text messages aren't necessarily the best and brightest thing over in the UK. In fact, a lot of Europe doesn't rely on text messages. They feel like it's extremely archaic, and they're focused on those push notifications, so using like a WhatsApp or a Skype to be able to push a message versus a SMS message. All right, we can go over to the next slide then. All right, so how we're social. I want to spend some time a little bit on social media because with mobile, because it is everywhere with us and it's really sort of focused on in the moment, social media is very much the same way. And in all truth, the number one mobile app downloaded to your smartphone device right now is Facebook. Now, I thought this stat was particularly interesting, and this comes from some recent information when I mentioned the adoption of and smartphone penetration. But the top 5 mobile apps right now, Facebook, YouTube, Google Search, Google Play, and then Facebook Messenger. So these are important things to consider. because they're social related. Even YouTube is a form of social media. We're commenting, we're engaging, we're sharing. Interestingly enough, email is number 9 on the list, and Instagram is number 10. So Twitter has fallen below the top 10 apps, which isn't surprising. Twitter's a little bit harder to use, and frankly, it moves very fast versus my Facebook timeline. It's a little bit easier to manage because I can control who I see and what I see. 73% of adults are using social media, and 42% of users have 2 or more accounts on different sites. And social sourcing allows us to identify candidates based on a social footprint. I am a fan of sourcing, which is why I was excited to work with DICE and excited about their app, because I think that sourcing is one of the best ways to proactively engage and search for candidates instead of relying on what I call the spray and pray. So when you think of when you post a job opening on your career site and you send out your URL or you share it with your community, you're relying on people to come to you based on maybe a relationship with your career site they kind of happen on, or certainly visiting a job board community looking for that information. But when you're sourcing directly for those candidates, you're able to engage them in the moment, which is what social media is all about, because they might have maybe a bad day, or they got their performance review, or they're just not being challenged at that current moment. You engage them and reach them in hopefully the perfect moment, and you might be able to snag a really awesome engineer, programmer, or data scientist candidate. One thing I'll also mention is 63% of mobile users right now are accessing social networks in the U.S. versus 62% in China. This is via their mobile device. However, 94% of mobile users are accessing social networks via their mobile in Australia. So once again, I'll just mention that depending upon the audience you're targeting and the area that you're targeting, people use mobile differently. I have my iPhone 6 Plus. I upgraded to the larger screen because I don't want to carry around multiple devices. My iPhone is my everything. It serves as my iPad and my phone. And then I will carry around my laptop for the bigger items or different things. But I am all about multitasking, so I'm certain that probably more than 94% of my time is probably spent on social networks. I try to avoid email altogether. So if you're sending me an email to tell me you left me a voicemail, my assistant will be reading that and letting me know what's happening. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So what recruiting activities do you consider mobile ones? One of the things that I really like to do in presentations, and we want to keep you engaged, this is part of In the Now, we are going to ask you a poll question. So if you take a moment, I see that Jonathan has popped this up for us. What recruiting activities do you consider mobile ones? Now, there isn't necessarily a wrong answer here. However, I just kind of get a sense, and plus it's kind of fun. So is social media a mobile activity for you? Interviews, sourcing, onboarding, or applying? So we'll give you a few seconds to kind of chime in here. And I'm looking forward to your responses because, and I don't want to give away everything, but obviously I'm a heavy user and early adopter to smartphones and mobile, but I have my own podcast. I am a heavy user of audiobooks. The first thing that I do in the morning is get on my Facebook, my Instagram, my Twitter, and then probably my email. So I'm definitely a mobile-first girl. I haven't even got out of bed yet. I don't know how long we want to wait before we push the results.
We'll give it another 20 seconds, and everybody, we did this exact same poll around our DICE office this morning, so we'll see how everybody compares.
You know, I was surprised, and it'll be interesting to see the results here for a second, but I had asked this question to a friend of mine who is actually on the recruiting team for Yelp, and interestingly enough, Yelp, their recruiters report directly to engineers, to the engineering department, and they actually sit in that area, which I'm used to sitting in an area to kind of absorb and understand and really be in the mindset of that candidate that I'm trying to find. I was really surprised, though, that they didn't necessarily necessarily rely so much on social recruiting. A lot of their activities around campus recruiting are either going on campus or sourcing the other social networks. Oh, interesting. Okay, so social media is mostly a mobile activity, online applying. And then sourcing. So we're kind of in the right vein. One thing I'll say about onboarding, and there are technologies that are existing right now to kind of help get that candidate ready, is that even a simple email, in my mind, is a form of a mobile engagement, because a large percentage of you, and you think about maybe your day spent when you get up in the morning, as I said, I access my email account. I do it primarily from my mobile device until I sit on my butt and sit here in front of my computer, and then I am engaging via email versus my desktop. So it's important for you to think about what mobile activities your recruiters are engaging in if you're managing a recruitment team, but also your candidates. And so one thing I would ask as you're polling your recent hires or candidate population is ask them, when are they accessing mobile? How often are they accessing their email? Is it from a mobile device? Is it from a desktop? And certainly mobile apply, that's kind of an easy one, right? Like we want to be able to make it easy to have those folks that we have determined as a fit for our organization. We'll see a lot of, I think, new things over the course of the next couple of years when we look at mobile learning, also maybe coding challenges via your mobile device. That would be interesting. And then, of course, video interviewing. Like I'm definitely a fan of Skype and the different technologies that exist for video interviewing. If I could have used that back in the day when I was heavily involved in my pre-screen interviews, I would have loved video interviewing, and particularly the pre-recorded interviews that I can go through maybe late at night from my phone and kind of take a look at candidates. All right, we can go to the next slide. Oh, did you want to share, Jonathan, what was around the DICE offices?
Sure. So social media was certainly number one. What was interesting was that social media was number one. Sourcing was number two. Onboarding was actually number three. A lot of people at DICE have started to see just more and more, a lot of more engagement with new hires through different communities that are based in either social or, as Jessica, as you mentioned, through text messages. Through that onboarding process.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get to the nitty gritty, because I can't believe we're already quite of the way in, and we have so much more to cover. So let's just get right to it. I want to touch a little bit on what I call the adoption curve in HR and recruiting technology. And so a lot of people get really caught up in mobile, because if I'm telling you that there's 75% market penetration for cell phones or for mobile devices, you're like, oh, man, I'm a late adopter. I am a laggard on this. And I want you to know that you are not. It is very easy to make an impact in the marketplace, because right now the expectation, the level of expectation, the level of execution is very little. So you don't have to have this crazy, expensive, long-winded process or strategy to make an impact in mobile. It really depends on the research that you do with your candidates and recent hires, and then what strategies fit your company. So I want just to let you know that when we kind of go through the different types of mobile here in a minute, you are not, if you haven't really set up mobile, it's okay. We can get started, and you can make a meaningful change. All right, let's go to the next slide and talk about mobile for HR and recruitment. There are really four areas that I think are particularly important when it comes to mobile for recruiting and hiring, and that's access. We want to be able to access it on the go, whenever, wherever we want. We have flexibility, so the flexibility to be able to toggle between our desktop and our computer. This is recruiters and job seekers. I like the ability of now. I call this the performance of now, and this is the ability for me to be able to get what I need when I need it right away. It's kind of like when I was on my Yelp, I'll pull up my Yelp and I'll say, Yelp, I need to eat a burrito, and I want it to be within a half mile of Market Street in San Francisco. Go into my Yelp, I can find what I need, and it's right now. I don't have to call my mom or pull my friends on Twitter. I can get the information needed simultaneously, which is why Google search is, the number 3 most used app on your mobile device. And then also the experience. extremely important to think about the experience for the candidate, but extremely important to think about the experience for the recruiter as well as the hiring manager via mobile. We want to make it easy for you guys as recruiters to find those people, uncover those hidden nuggets, and then pass them on to the hiring manager so that we can put an offer in and then work on our next rec. Hiring manager experience is critical because you and I both know that they are very busy, and we need to make it as easy as possible to be able to get in, take a look at the candidates that we have, engage with those candidates, and then move forward with an offer so they can join their company. Otherwise, they kind of have a little bit of ADD. When I think about mobile, there are really four different categories in my mind, and they all start with the letter S, so this is a little bit easy. We have social, we have sourcing, we have our site, and then we have supporting. So we'll kind of walk through the subcategories of this, but some of these are pretty easy. And I really think that social is so easy to implement, and we can get on Twitter, we can engage, we can then also source for those candidates in that proactive recruiting model where we aren't just going crazy and reactive and posting that job. We can be a little bit strategy and planning in this and look for these people and start to build a relationship with maybe a target audience of candidates through sourcing before somebody opens the floodgates and says, Jessica, we just got funding. I need 25 engineers tomorrow. And you and I both know that that probably happens at your company. Next is your career site. The career site, in my mind, is the heart of your employment brand as well as the center of your recruiting universe. It is the one place where you're driving people to a unified network that you can fully control and own. And then also supporting, which we'll talk about those in just a moment. All right, let's talk about different types of mobile. Social, that's pretty self-explanatory. A mobile-optimized career site. We'll have some examples here in a moment about this. This just means that your site is optimized for mobile. So instead of worrying about the type of device that you're using, because it used to be that you would have to create multiple websites based on, so it would render or adjust to the size of your screen. And there are lots of web developers, or maybe you've been involved in this, where you're shaking your head because you had every type of phone out there, mobile, BlackBerry, iPhone, you had the iPad, you had whatever it was, so that you could adjust the build of the website to be optimized for mobile. Well, now things are rendered, so they will self-adjust for themselves. That's why if you go to bloggingforjobs.com, you'll be able to see that the site will adjust automatically based on the size of your screen. Next, there's a mobile app. We have an example of a mobile app. Pepsi has a wonderful mobile app. I will say that mobile apps can be really expensive. They are also agnostic specifically to the type of device. So if you have an Android, you need to have an Android app in the Google Play. Or if you want to have an iOS or an Apple app, you have to have it there. And there's lots of updates and different technical things. It's an ongoing cost. When you have a mobile-optimized career site, no, it's a little bit more set it and forget it. However, if you are engaging maybe a customer audience or somebody from mobile, and there's already a mobile app in play, like if I was Pottery Barn, I would add a careers tab to maybe my Pottery Barn mobile app. Zappos has a nice one there. Starbucks does a good job of this. You can just add it to in your existing app, and you're not having to kind of recreate the whole thing. Mobile resources, that's just resources that are mobile optimized, things that are available to candidates. That could be your video interviewing platform or maybe your mobile onboarding. Next, you have video. I am a huge fan of video in terms of YouTube and Instagram videos. All these things are a really great way to engage from a branding perspective and engagement perspective. You can really send out a call to action using video. And there is an example in Snapchat where a pub in Ireland actually created a job ad and posted it on their Snapchat and had hundreds of candidates apply for their job opening that cost them little to no money. I don't know if in the U.S. we necessarily want to go down that route where we're only posting our job listings via Snapchat. In fact, I don't recommend because it could offer up some discrimination problems, but it's an interesting prospect. So mobile can be video optimized. We talked about mobile apply. I think that's probably one of the most well-known types of mobile outside of your mobile optimized career site or social media. So I won't cover a lot about that. We'll see some examples. And then sourcing. Sourcing, my favorite thing. social media and all this technology on all these websites and member sites all over the internet are providing us as recruiters a huge opportunity to go on the internet and research and engage and reach these people in these super ultra niche communities. For example, one really great sourcing strategy that I like to use is conferences. So if there is a conference or a meetup.com and they have an associated Twitter hashtag, you can source and build a relationship with candidates and kind of cull that list then to be able to engage. Another great tip for Twitter, and one of the events that I love, is South by Southwest. Most sessions at South by have a secondary hashtag. So South by for the interactive media portion is crazy. It is so many people in one place, and so it would be very hard for recruiters to be able to engage. However, you can source by simply going to a session live at South by Southwest, and I've seen a number of recruiters in the digital space and the technical space attend very specific sessions that would attract the audience of candidate that they would want to work at their company. You can also source online using social media and find that secondary hashtag and then build that and call that list. And so you have a very small number but specific number of qualified candidates in which to engage. I did mention this earlier while we go to this next slide here. Email is, in fact, a mobile activity, and it is something that we are consistently doing via our mobile device, and that's important to think about when you're writing and crafting messages and content for candidates, whether it's email, whether it's a tweet, whether it's a Facebook message, a lot of other things. It's important to remember that chances are that candidates are accessing your message to them via their mobile device. All right, so we're going to go to our next poll question. You know I love polls here. And this one is asking you, as we kind of go forward with some examples, where are you in your mobile strategy for recruiting? So is this session, this webinar here, this time with me and Jonathan, just something you're kind of in the research phase, you're just kind of thinking about, or are you just launching, maybe dipping your toe in the water, you have your strategy, or maybe you're experienced, this is old hat for you, you have like 1 or 2 years under your belt, but maybe you're looking at expanding your offering, maybe you're intrigued by the sourcing component, because I think that is an area that is exploding in the market and is a really great opportunity for tech recruiters to find these candidates in places that they wouldn't expect. I personally love meetup.com for a great way to x-ray and find those hidden groups and hidden candidates to be able to engage. Or are you old hat? Is this something you've been doing for a while? Maybe you are one of the companies that I'm going to be talking about in the next few minutes, and you're just kind of checking in to see. I would love to hear from you if you are experienced or old hat about what's working and what's not working. So feel free to either send us a note here or go ahead and send us a tweet, and I will be looking forward to kind of getting your opinion as we go along.
Yeah, and I'll just say as we round up this poll question, one of the reasons that we did this webinar was we've had a lot of discussions with a lot of customers who have dabbled in mobile, but have not developed a cohesive strategy that encompasses everything that Jessica has mentioned, and it's really been eye-opening to have so many discussions that start with, did you know that your job postings can be made more mobile optimized? Did you know that your email communications need to be tested against, need to be tested for, are they going to be received by people who are reading their email on their mobile device?
Yeah, if you're an image-heavy email, I have to press another button, right, to be able to add those images, and you are missing out an opportunity to engage that, high prospect that you've spent all this time researching. So let's take a look at the results here. I'm interested to see.
Jessica, it looks like we have 3 old hats. And
very good. Okay, well, if you're an old hat, I would love to know where you work. So send Jonathan a note and just be interested in seeing, and then maybe maybe I'll be talking about you. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide here. Okay, we're gonna start talking about some examples. And one of my favorite mobile websites right now is Accenture's. And so this is an example of a website that is mobile rendered, and it's very easy and clear. So part of mobile rendered sites or having a mobile optimized site is that you have to really prioritize what's important for you or for the job seeker to be able to be seen. And so in most cases, in a mobile environment where they have just maybe a 4-inch screen to be able to look at, the best place for them is to be able to maybe search for that job or to look at information about your company. So you can see with Accenture, they have the ability to search and also mobile apply. There is a nice report from 2013, and there'll be a new one coming out here shortly from Potential Park that you can access. I have the link here for you. I'll just quickly mention that 68% of job seekers right now are accessing mobile once a week. This number is about 6 months old. I anticipate that it's even larger when I think about the amount of people that probably got a smartphone or a tablet for their holiday Christmas present. Let's go to the next slide here. One of my favorite companies that is doing a really great job of social media in particular is HP. So you can see this is just a screenshot of a tweet that they have. They have a lot of different hashtags that they're using to engage different communities and audiences and encourage candidate as well as employee participation. And they have a hashtag HP Careers, which is one of my favorites. Another one that I will mention is Adobe Life, and that is just Adobe. It's an organic movement that simply started from their small employment branding team that sent out a tweet and has created a really low-budget movement where employees are participating and sharing and generating buzz and information around their organization using social media. So I'm not talking about sourcing here. I'm more talking about employment branding in this space, kind of just generating that noise and conversation that drives people to your career site, which I hope is mobile optimized and enabled. Interestingly enough, I'll just mention when I was at a conference and I first heard the folks at Adobe talk about their Adobe Live hashtag, I was live tweeting the event, and one of the engineers that they were mentioning in the course of this presentation actually tweeted me, and I had a really great conversation with her. She is not someone that is I would identify as a heavy influencer. She doesn't have hundreds of thousands of Twitter followers. She has really about 3,500, but what makes her unique in her messaging and her engagement is that she engages. So she's really active, and she's an advocate for that company and certainly driving technical candidates to apply at Adobe through her interactions, whether on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, all over the web. All right, next slide here. Here are some examples of a desktop versus mobile. So we talked about Accenture in the last slide. I want to show you just kind of the differences between what they might look like. And so one of the reasons I chose to talk about Taco Bell is because I really like them from a branding perspective, that their customer campaign aligns with their candidate campaign. So the Live Moss cuts across and the message is unified. But you can really see how they have really prioritized what things are most important for the mobile user. So the screen renders automatically here in the desktop versus the mobile. It encourages viewing for the job search. It's easy to look for job openings. And then also they have incorporated mobile apply into their offering. All right, go ahead. One of my favorite apps out there right now, and I have a list of 25 more on the blog here on the link, so you can just go to that if you want, but Pepsi has a wonderful app. And if you've heard Chris Hoyt of Pepsi talk, he talks a lot about their strategy and what they have been employing and kind of their journey. They have a very strong consumer brand. So their app is recognizable, and it's driving candidates to apply for their job, but also to build a talent pipeline or a talent community of their own. I want to point out that apps are expensive. This is an investment that you make. They are a long-term recruiting strategy. Chris talks very much about some of the wins that they've had and how it's really differentiated them as a brand and be able to accelerate their recruiting and hiring process. Your app should be available on iTunes, the BlackBerry, and also the Google Play site to be able to reach your wide audience. Now, if you are looking at alternatives to this, I would talk to your candidate audience and find out, what device do they normally use. You can look at your web traffic through Google Analytics to see where people are coming from, and maybe that will kind of give you an idea if this is something that you want to research. Apps are nice because they are fully customizable and branded. You're encouraging people to log in, possibly, but then maybe if you're Pepsi or Taco Bell or some of these other bigger brands, you can incorporate your very recognizable consumer brand with your candidate brand, and you're able kind of to kill two birds with one stone, because chances are if you like Pepsi, you probably, if you're a candidate or a customer, like, people don't necessarily apply at Pepsi that don't like Pepsi or Doritos, or it's kind of what I'm saying. Let's talk a little bit about some of the mobile experience, because I want to make sure we have time for questions here. One of my important points that I want to focus on is that mobile is not just for candidates. I mentioned hiring managers and recruiters, but you guys are on the road, on the fly, in the moment, looking for these great candidates. And so having a technology and a strategy that incorporates or increases your productivity so that you can source more candidates, engage more candidates, schedule more interviews, and ultimately make higher quality hires in a shorter time to hire is critical for how your organization is going to grow and scale. So true mobile recruitment is no longer tied to the desk, and that really makes for the mobile recruitment experience. And I think that's something that is extremely often overlooked. As far as mobile for recruiters, we're looking at sourcing, we're looking at managing profiles, and then we're looking at engagement. Mobile is a platform by which people want to interact with you. We have it. It's around us. We're tied to our phones. We sleep with our phones. More people than not, they sleep with their phones more than their spouses. It's the first thing you see in the morning, the first thing that you interact with. You're interacting with a larger audience of people. It's both internal and external. So internal within your organization and external with brands and marketing or with candidates. So as you look at these technologies and you're looking at options to be able to buy, make sure they're mobile first or they're BYOD strategy. Some things to think about when it comes to mobile, and we're getting new data around mobile usage for recruiting and for recruiters all the time, and so it's more accurate and really provides us more resources. Tuesday is actually the most popular day for the mobile job search. And before and after work hours are peak times for mobile job search. Now, I encourage you to take a look at your Google Analytics and see your activity. I know for me, when I look at my blog and I look at readership, it peaks in the morning and the evening for tablet and mobile usage. So pull out or get access to your Google Analytics and take a look at mobile usage or tablet usage to kind of see when people are accessing your career site or your page and applying for jobs via mobile. It's also critical to think about sourcing strategies and messaging during these before and after work hours, because it is a time where they're right in front of their phone, they're able to answer quickly, and you might be able to have a leg up. I'm not suggesting that you work 24 hours a day. However, sometimes the best time to recruit is when you're sitting on your couch in the evening and just kind of reflecting on the day. And your candidates are doing things the same way. So they're multi-screening, they have their phone, they have their TV, and they're just kind of enjoying the evening. You can be able to engage with them in the moment, and they're there now, and you don't have to wait. As I mentioned, recruiters should have the same capabilities of candidates. One of the nice things, and I've downloaded and take a look and have used the Dice Recruiter app, is that it allows for you to search talent within a mobile device. And you can quickly engage in real time. So you don't necessarily need to leave the app, to go into Twitter, to send a direct message, or whatever other social network that you're on. You're able to organize your contacts, the profiles that you're talking to, the people that you're interested in maybe following or getting to know, and then you're able to engage them in the moment, which we're in that performance of now, right? It's about accessibility, flexibility, and the now, and giving them the resources that they need. One of the most important ways to get started is to ask your recent hires. We talked about this. Prioritize your strategy and use what I call the P word, and that's a pilot. The pilot program is sometimes the best way to get your foot in the door to kind of build on maybe a larger, more encompassing, and maybe more involved strategy. So testing something out for 30 or 60 or 90 days with a small group. Maybe it's just your recruiters in the engineering office, so versus your recruiters who are responsible for the sales and marketing function. The engineer recruiters, we test out the pilot. There's 5 of us for 90 days, or 15 of us, whatever the number. Kind of take a look, refocus, and then we have a business case to be able to say, manager, head of talent acquisition, CEO, we've had this success. We can scale this success, fill positions faster, get you your product needs faster, and reduce that time to fill and find better hires by looking at a mobile-first strategy. It's not just about starting with social media or looking at a mobile rendering or a sourcing recruiting strategy. I want you guys to really take a look and think about what's most important to you. And so if the challenge is getting candidates and finding those technical hires, then I would say you want to look at sourcing, right? How can we engage people in the now to fill those current positions that are maybe taking us months to be able to fill? Or I've seen some engineering positions recs that have been open for 9 months to a year. So let's try something new. Let's take a sourcing-first strategy and then incorporate different pieces into that. But we do need to make our house attractive, kind of like the curb appeal of your home, and that starts with a mobile rendered site. So if I'm looking at takeaways before we start to take questions here, I want to focus on your mobile experience, so recruiters, hiring managers, as well as candidates. But think about you guys. We often get overlooked, and so we're dealing with clunky systems or software that isn't always conducive to be able to be successful in recruiting. We're logging into 15 screens, we're copying and pasting information, we're using Excel spreadsheets. So making sure that it is a mobile experience and that it is customized to the audience, whether it's you, the hiring manager, the candidate, it's critical. HR technology historically follows consumer trends, which is why I like to talk about consumer trends, adoption of mobile, and usage. Chances are these technical candidates that you're engaging, they're probably highly technical, highly on trend, and the expectation is that your organization needs to be on point to be able to attract those best-in candidates that are in the technical community. Pilot programs, mentioned them here towards the end. If you take anything away from this pilot, it is so critical to be able to really build momentum for your mobile strategy within your organization, and that small changes can make an impact to your overall larger organization. You don't have to change your entire recruitment strategy to be able to make an impact. It can be a small thing. So here's my information. Feel free to call me, text me, tweet me. Here's some additional sources I have over here on the right-hand side for you to get the information that you need. I'm going to hand this back over to Jonathan, and he is going to send me some questions. I'm ready.
Absolutely wonderful. And you will notice that all of the contact information for Jessica is mobile-friendly, whether it's Twitter, her text messages, or her blog. Just as we get the questions coming in here, we really built the Dice Recruiter app, which is an extension of our open web platform, to allow you to bridge that gap between how candidates are interacting with their mobile device and searching for jobs and engaging with each other, and how the capabilities that we want recruiters to have, so you can search for candidates on your way home, on your commute home from work. You can save them and then do further research in the morning, or share them immediately at night or on the weekends with hiring managers. So we have time, with that said, for a number of questions here, and then again we're going to go to Dice Innovate, to our Twitter chat with the hashtag Dice Innovate. So Jessica, we are going to start with a question on email. I think that both you and I, we hit a chord when we suggested that email communications are mobile. And so the question is, what should a recruiter, what should they be thinking about when they're typing up their initial email communication to a candidate? What should they be thinking about in terms of, is that person going to respond, given that they're probably on a mobile device?
I don't know about you, but I respond via mobile device. Frankly, I respond better when I am on my mobile device because if I read it and I don't respond right away, I'm probably going to forget that message, and it's less likely that I'm going to be going back. So it's really important that your message be compelling and you show that candidate that you're reaching out to via email that you've done the work and that you're not just one of those other tech recruiters that they swap stories about in the break room or at happy hour. And that starts with a unique message. It needs to be short and to the point, but you need to say, look, I've done the research. I know that you are not a Java developer. You are specializing in Ruby on Rails or some other area. I have this opening. You look like you have some good experience. If you're interested, let's talk. There is a lot of conversation among engineers, and I like to, anytime that I'm in a room with engineers or having beers, ask them a question like, how are you getting pitched? What does it look like? What's not working? What is working? And get some feedback on what your message to be. But think about it. It needs to be short and to the point, but also personalized that says, I've done the work. I'm not just that regular tech recruiter that, you guys kind of have stereotyped in your head. I want to talk about an opportunity if you're interested. Call me, text me, email me.
Call me, text me. I think that will be next. That will be a hit song soon.
I'm working on the lyrics, yes.
Call me, text me, maybe. I like it.
Yeah.
Okay, our next question goes back to, Jessica, your initial point that we should be focusing on understanding our candidates first before developing this holistic mobile strategy that we're all suggesting is critical for the future of efficient and effective recruiting. The question is, how do we better understand which social sites or mobile apps our candidates are engaging with? So, you suggested that for most of us, we're engaged on Facebook, we're engaged with a number of Google apps, but how do we understand that for someone's particular niche? Do you have any recommendations in terms of focus groups, in terms of surveying candidates?
So yes, all of the above, and so I would say that you want to make a short survey that you could send to your existing engineering team and ask them about where they're spending their time via their mobile device. Is it YouTube? Is it OverSec? Where are they spending? Is it Quora? Is it Secret? What social networks or places are they going that they're spending their time, or online groups? And ask them. And it could be just a simple 7-question survey that you could get some data, because we might find that they might be spending a lot of time on Twitter. However, they don't provide any information that makes it able as a recruiter to source those candidates. So I think the key is a survey and then to follow up with some meetings. I would look at internal first, because these folks are going to be a little bit more eager to share, right, because they're working for your organization. If you can get them in a room for 45 minutes after you do the survey, kind of ask them about the results and see, if they were looking, where their friends would be going and what they would be doing. And then from there, maybe you expand your search and take a look at your existing candidate pool of recent hires. There are companies and research firms and analyst companies that exist in the market that do the research for you. So if you're overwhelmed about going out there to the candidate community, there are companies that will do the research and provide you with that information so that you can make a good decision as you're building your strategy. But I like the in-person stuff because people are able to tell me more succinctly or more information beyond a 7-question survey.
Great. So we have time for 2 more questions. I will take this next question that came in. It is about the Dice Recruiter app, and the question is, how is it integrated with OpenWeb? The answer is that the Dice Recruiter app is an extension of our OpenWeb platform that scours 130 social sites. And we also just recently released a Chrome extension that allows you to search the web and to identify candidates through OpenWeb while you're searching the web as well. So our Dice Recruiter app is part of our open web platform, and if for customers on the webinar, if you have access to open web, you also have access to the Dice Recruiter app. The final question that we'll have time for before we go over to Twitter, well, I do have to say before we get to that final question, we do have a comment that "Call Me, Beat Me If You Want to Reach Me" is actually a theme song. So we will look that up, and we will include that reference as an Easter egg in an upcoming Dice blog post. The final question that we will take, the final question that we'll be able to take with Jessica live is, what would be your first step as a recruiter who is spearheading efforts to, quote, go mobile in terms of setting up a mobile app? Should you contact your technology department? Should you contact your senior management in human resources and talent acquisition? And what would be the first thing you would say to them?
So the first thing that I would do would to have research for my case, because they're going to want to know numbers. They're going to want to know, how's this going to impact positively my recruiting efforts? Is it going to lend to building a talent community or increasing the time to fill decreasing the time to fill for these positions? So I would look at other recruiting teams and organizations that have apps and maybe do a little bit of homework and have a sit down. Maybe invite them to happy hour or pick up the phone and say, hey, tell me about, your success. What do these numbers look like? What's working for you? What's not? And be able to get some information beforehand. If you're going to be talking to the executive team or your head of talent acquisition, they're going to want to know what's in it for me. I would say you want to hit talent acquisition first, your boss, and then they can rope in marketing, senior leaders. They can also bring in IT to kind of understand and decide where we go from here. But you need to have a solid plan and have your research first before you even have that conversation with your boss. And maybe, and I don't know where you are in your strategy, but if an app is something that is a little bit out of your wheelhouse, having some wins under your belt in other areas of mobile could help also make the case for you going full force into developing an app.
Fantastic. Well, on behalf of Dice and behalf of Jessica, I want to thank everybody for attending and participating. Again, if you have any suggestions or feedback on our webinar topics, it's at employers@dice.com. And we are now going to go over to Twitter and continue this discussion under the hashtag DiceInnovate. And I want to reiterate that everyone here will receive the webinar recording in approximately a week. So thank you, everybody.